I was once a successful architect in Boston with a beautiful home, and what I thought was the perfect marriage. But 4 years ago, my younger brother Derek betrayed me in the worst possible way. He stole my wife Sophia right from under my nose. I spent years rebuilding my life, avoiding family gatherings where they might be present. Then came my father's 65th birthday party, where Derek showed up uninvited with my ex-wife and openly mocked me in front of everyone. What happened next changed our family forever. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to face someone who betrayed your trust. Growing up, Derek was 7 years younger than me. I always felt protective of him, even though I could sense his jealousy from an early age. While I excelled in school and sports, Derek struggled to find his place. Still, I loved him fiercely, the way only an older brother can. When I graduated with honors from my architecture program at 23, Derek barely made it through high school. My career took off immediately. I landed a position at one of the most prestigious firms in Boston, working my way up quickly through dedication and natural talent. It was during this time at 24 that I met Sophia at a coffee shop near my office. She was reading a book on architectural history, which caught my attention immediately. With her dark hair and intelligent eyes, she was everything I had ever wanted. "That is a rare addition," I said, pointing to her book. She looked up with a smile that knocked the breath out of me. "Are you an architecture buff too?" That simple exchange led to 3 years of the most beautiful courtship. We shared passions for design, art, and creating a home together. When I proposed, she cried happy tears, and we married at my parents' lake house the following spring. The ceremony was intimate, with Derek serving as my best man. I remember him hugging me tightly, afterward whispering, "You lucky bastard," with a laugh I did not recognize as ominous at the time. The early years of our marriage were everything I had dreamed of. Sophia and I bought a Victorian house that needed renovation, and we spent weekends restoring it together. We talked about having children once we finished the major projects. Life seemed perfect on the surface, but my work schedule became increasingly demanding. As a junior partner on track for full partnership, I was taking on larger projects that required extensive travel. Meanwhile, Derek was floundering. He had dropped out of college, moved between several jobs, and was constantly short on money. When he called me desperate for work, I pulled strings to get him a position in the marketing department at my firm. I thought I was helping him get on his feet. I never imagined I was bringing him closer to my wife during my frequent absences. Sophia had started expressing her loneliness. "Roland, we barely see each other anymore," she would say when I came home exhausted after 14-hour workdays. I promised things would improve after my big project finished, but that was still months away. I was building our future, securing our financial stability, working toward the partnership that would give us the life I thought we both wanted. I was wrong. It was our 4th anniversary when everything fell apart. I had been in Chicago for 2 weeks, overseeing a major development, but managed to wrap things up a day early to surprise Sophia. I picked up her favorite champagne and flowers, excited to reconnect after too much time apart. When I opened our front door, the house was quiet, except for faint music coming from upstairs. I smiled, thinking Sophia might be taking a bath. I climbed the stairs quietly, planning to surprise her. The bedroom door was partially open. I heard laughter, Sophia's familiar laugh, and then a male voice that made me freeze. "Derek, my brother." I pushed the door open slowly. The image is permanently burned into my memory, my wife and my brother in our bed, tangled in sheets that Sophia and I had picked out together. They did not notice me for several long seconds as I stood paralyzed in the doorway. Sophia saw me first. Her eyes widened in horror. "Roland, you were not supposed to be home until tomorrow." Those words, not "this is not what it looks like," or "I can explain," but the fact that they had planned this around my schedule hit me like a physical blow. Derek sat up, not even attempting to cover himself. The look on his face was not shame, but something closer to defiance. "What the hell is this?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Derek actually had the audacity to speak first. "She has been lonely, Roland. You are never here. Someone needed to take care of her. Take care of her. In my bed. My own brother." The room seemed to tilt around me. Sophia was crying now. "It just happened, Roland. We did not mean for it to happen. Just happened." "How long has this just happened?" I demanded. Their silence told me everything. Finally, Sophia whispered, 4 months. 4 months. While I had been working overtime to build our future, my brother and wife had been dismantling it behind my back. I walked out without another word, checked into a hotel, and did not come home for 3 days. When I returned to collect some things, Derek had already moved in. The family fallout was immediate and messy. My parents were horrified, but in their misguided attempt to love both sons equally, they tried to maintain relationships with each of us. They did not take sides publicly, which felt like another betrayal. The divorce proceedings were quick but painful. Sophia got the house. I could not bear to live there anyway, and half of our savings. Derek moved in with her permanently within weeks. I found a small apartment downtown, close to work, though my performance there suffered tremendously. I contemplated leaving Boston altogether, starting fresh somewhere, without the constant risk of running into them. But some stubborn part of me refused to be driven from my city, my career, my life. The following year was the darkest of my life. I lost 20 pounds, rarely slept, and nearly lost my position at the firm. It was my mentor there who finally intervened, connecting me with a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. Slowly, painfully, I began rebuilding. I joined a rowing club on the Charles River, reconnected with old friends, and gradually found my footing again. Over the next 4 years, I created a new life for myself. I earned the partnership I had been working toward, bought a comfortable condo overlooking the harbor, and even dated casually. But I never let anyone get too close. The walls I had built were too high, too thick. Trust seemed like a luxury I could no longer afford. I maintained minimal contact with Derek and Sophia, despite living in the same city. Boston was large enough that I rarely ran into them accidentally. During holidays and family events, I made excuses not to attend if I knew they would be there. My parents visited me separately. It was an uneasy peace, maintained by careful distance and avoidance. Then came my father's 65th birthday party. Mom insisted I attend. "Your father misses you," she said. "He is getting older, Roland. Do this for him." She promised Derek would come alone. Apparently, he and Sophia had agreed to take turns at family functions to minimize conflict. She lied. The day of the party arrived with perfect early summer weather. I drove to my childhood home feeling anxious, but determined to be there for my father. The driveway was already lined with cars when I arrived. I recognized most of them. Aunts, uncles, cousins. But one sleek black BMW caught my eye. Derek had recently started a real estate business that was supposedly doing well, too well according to the rumors about his questionable practices. I steeled myself and walked inside with my father's gift, a rare first edition of his favorite author's work that had taken me months to track down. The house was filled with familiar faces, and for a moment I felt myself relax. Then I saw them in the backyard through the kitchen window. Derek and Sophia standing close together, laughing with my uncle. My mother approached, looking guilty. "Roland, I am so sorry. Derek was supposed to come alone." I had no idea he would bring her until they showed up together. The initial shock gave way to a cold anger. I had been ambushed, but I refused to ruin my father's birthday by making a scene. "It is fine, Mom. I am here for Dad." The words tasted like ashes. Dad spotted me from across the room and came over, wrapping me in a bear hug. "Son, so glad you made it." His eyes held a mixture of joy and concern. I managed a genuine smile for him. "Happy birthday, Dad. Would not miss it." The next few hours were an exercise in self-control. I positioned myself inside, while Derek and Sophia remained primarily in the backyard. When dinner was announced, however, there was no avoiding the large table set up in the dining room. I found myself seated directly across from them, a cruel coincidence or deliberate arrangement. Derek had changed over the years. He had grown heavier, more flashy, with an expensive watch and tailored clothes that screamed new money. Sophia looked thinner than I remembered, lines around her eyes that had not been there before. She barely met my gaze throughout the meal. My father gave a speech about being blessed with family around him on his birthday. The irony was not lost on me. As plates were cleared and dessert was served, Derek became increasingly loud, fueled by several glasses of wine. He began telling stories about recent vacations, business successes, and their renovated home, my former home. We finally fixed that disaster of a kitchen, he announced to the table. Roland never got around to it in all those years, too busy with work. He laughed, looking at me directly for the first time. I focused on my plate, unwilling to engage. Remember how he was always working weekends? No wonder poor Sophia was lonely. Another pointed laugh. My cousin James tried to change the subject, but Derek was on a roll now. Hey Roland, remember that trip to Bali we took last winter? The one you and Sophia always talked about but never got around to. He pulled out his phone, flipping through photos. Amazing what you can do when you actually make time for life. Right? I noticed my father's jaw tighten across the table. Derek continued. We used some of that inheritance money from Grandma. You know the portion you would have gotten if you had attended her 80th birthday, the one you skipped because you knew we would be there. That was a lie. I had been in the hospital with pneumonia during that birthday, something Derek knew perfectly well. I stood up abruptly. Excuse me, I need some air. I walked out to the front porch, breathing deeply, trying to calm the rage building inside me. I heard the front door open behind me and braced myself. Running away again, Roland, always were good at that. Derek's voice dripped with mockery. I turned slowly. Not tonight, Derek. It is Dad's birthday. Sophia had followed him out, tugging at his arm. Derek, please, let's go back inside. He shook her off. No, I want to talk to my big brother. We hardly ever see him anymore. He stepped closer, too busy being important, or just too scared to face us. I remained silent, which seemed to anger him more. You know what, I did you a favor. You were never right for Sophia. Too boring, too predictable. She needed someone who could make her feel alive. He reached back and pulled Sophia forward. Tell him, honey. Tell him how much better life is now. Sophia looked mortified. Derek, stop this. You are drunk. I am not drunk. I am honest. He turned back to me with a cruel smile. We are getting married, by the way, and there is more. Show him Sophia. Sophia reluctantly placed a hand on her stomach, and I felt the world tilt again. She was pregnant. They were having the child that Sophia and I had planned, but never prioritized. Congratulations. I managed to say, my voice hollow. Derek laughed again. See? So polite. So proper. You were always too boring for her anyway. No passion. All work and architectural drawings. Something snapped inside me. I stepped forward, fists clenched, ready to finally release 4 years of pent-up fury. Derek's eyes widened slightly, but his smirk remained. Neighbors across the street had stopped to watch the scene unfolding on our porch. The humiliation burned deep. I forced myself to step back. Violence would solve nothing, only lower me to his level. I turned to walk to my car. That is right. Walk away. It is what you do best. Derek shouted after me. I was fumbling with my keys when I heard the front door slam open again. But it was not Derek this time. It was my father. Dad stormed onto the porch, with a fury I had never seen in him before. At 65, he was still an imposing figure, 6'2" with broad shoulders and a commanding presence from his years as a high school principal. Enough his voice boomed across the yard. Derek Marshall Johnson, you shut your mouth right now. Derek looked stunned. Our father rarely raised his voice, and never in public. Dad, we were just talking. No, you were not just talking. You were humiliating your brother at my birthday party after showing up with his ex-wife when you promised your mother you would come alone. Dad's face was flushed with anger. Neighbors were openly watching now. Sophia looked like she wanted to disappear. Dad turned to me. Roland, please do not leave. Then back to Derek inside. Now, both of you. Like chastised children, we followed him into the house and into his study, away from the party guests. Mom was waiting there, her face pale with distress. Dad closed the door behind us. 4 years, he said, his voice quieter but no less intense. 4 years I have watched this family torn apart. 4 years I have tried to love both my sons equally, despite what happened. But what I saw tonight crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. Derek tried to interrupt, but Dad held up his hand. I know everything, Derek. Everything. The gambling debts you had when you moved in on your brother's wife. The money you borrowed from your grandmother before she died. Money she thought was for a business investment. The real reason you were at Roland's house that day when he was out of town. My head was spinning. Gambling debts. What was he talking about? Dad continued. Roland, your brother, did not just happen to fall in love with Sophia. He deliberately pursued her because he needed money to pay off bookies who were threatening him. He knew your house was paid for, that you had substantial savings. Sophia gasped. That is not true. But her eyes told a different story. Uncertainty, dawning horror. Ask him, Dad challenged. Ask him about the $70,000 that disappeared from your joint account 2 weeks after he moved in with you. I remembered that money. Sophia had said she needed it for house repairs and new investments after the divorce. I had been too devastated to fight about it. Derek's face had gone from defiant to cornered. Dad, you do not know what you are talking about. I know exactly what I am talking about. Your mother and I hired a private investigator last year when things did not add up. We know about the gambling, the debts. All of it. The silence in the room was deafening. Sophia turned to Derek, her voice shaking. Is this true? Did you only pursue me for money? Derek's non-answer was answer enough. Dad turned to me. I should have done this years ago, son. I am sorry. I thought staying neutral was the right thing, but I was wrong. He then faced Derek again. Until you make this right. All of it. You are no longer welcome in this house or at family functions. I will not disown you because you are my son, but I will not condone what you have done either. Derek's face contorted with rage and embarrassment. You cannot be serious. You would choose him over me. After everything I have built. Dad's laugh was bitter. You have built nothing. You have stolen and lied and manipulated. That is not building, Derek. That is destroying. Sophia was crying now, her hand protectively over her stomach. I need to leave, she whispered. Dad nodded. Sophia, despite everything you are carrying my grandchild, you will always have a place here. But not with him, not like this. I stood frozen, unable to process everything happening. Part of me felt vindicated after years of silently enduring their betrayal. Another part felt hollow at seeing the full extent of my brother's deception. Without another word, I walked out. As I passed through the living room party, guests pretended not to notice their awkward conversations, too loud, too forced. I reached my car and drove away, emotions too complex to name swirling inside me. The next week brought a series of revelations. Mom visited my apartment with the full report from the private investigator. Derek had been gambling heavily for years, accumulating debts I never knew about. His targeting of Sophia had been calculated, a way to access my assets when his creditors started threatening violence. The affair had been his entry point, the emotional manipulation his method. Most shocking was learning that their relationship had been unraveling for months. Derek's gambling had continued, and he had burned through most of their money. My money. Sophia had threatened to leave multiple times, but stayed partly out of shame at facing the consequences of their actions, and partly because she still cared for him despite everything. The pregnancy, which I had assumed was a happy development for them, was actually a last-ditch attempt to save their failing relationship. The perfect life they had flaunted at family gatherings and on social media was a carefully constructed lie. I spent long nights processing these revelations. The therapist I had been seeing helped me work through the complex emotions. Strangely, knowing the truth behind their betrayal helped me let go of some of the self-doubt that had plagued me for years. This had never been about my failings as a husband. It had been about Derek's character and his desperation. 3 months after the birthday party confrontation, I attended my 20-year high school reunion. I had almost skipped it, but my old friend Marcus insisted. There I reconnected with Julia, a girl I had known since elementary school, who had moved back to Boston after a divorce of her own. Unlike the women I had casually dated since Sophia, Julia's warmth and authenticity broke through my defenses. We began seeing each other regularly, building a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. Derek attempted to apologize several months later. He showed up at my office sober and humbled. The The real estate business had failed. Sophia had left him, and he was in a 12-step program for his gambling addiction. I listened to his apology without interrupting. "I do not expect forgiveness," he said finally, "but I needed you to hear this. I did not offer easy absolution. Instead, I told him, I hope you get the help you need, Derek. But I need time and distance. Years of it, maybe." He nodded, understanding the boundaries I was setting. It was not hatred, just self-protection. My relationship with my father grew stronger than it had ever been. He carried his own guilt for not seeing through Derek's lies sooner, for trying to stay neutral when taking a stand had been needed. We had long conversations about family loyalty and the complexities of loving people who hurt us. A year after the confrontation, we had another family dinner. The dynamics had shifted entirely. I brought Julia, now my fiancée. Derek came alone, quieter, and visibly working on himself. Sophia did not attend. She had moved to Portland after the baby was born, allowing Derek visitation but keeping her distance. That evening, watching my family attempt to heal its deep wounds, I realized that true strength was never in revenge or even in confrontation. It was in the patient, difficult work of rebuilding, whether relationships or one's own life. 2 years have passed since that explosive confrontation at my father's birthday party. The journey since then has been one of healing and rediscovery. My therapist helped me understand how childhood patterns had shaped both Derek's actions and my responses. I learned that my tendency to overwork and my difficulty expressing emotions were partly defense mechanisms developed in our competitive household. Julia brought balance to my life in ways I never expected. Her straightforward communication style and emotional intelligence challenged me to be more present, more connected. When we married last spring, we kept the ceremony intimate, inviting only those who had supported us through difficult times. Derek was not there. He remains on the periphery of my life. Occasional updates from my parents let me know he is still sober, still working his program. Sophia moved to Portland, Oregon, with their daughter Lily. She sends Christmas cards to my parents with photos of the little girl who has Derek's eyes but thankfully seems to have none of his darker qualities. My architecture firm made me full partner last year. The promotion came after I designed an award-winning community center that focused on bringing divided neighborhoods together, something that felt personally significant. I now mentor younger architects, encouraging them to find balance between ambition and personal life, wisdom earned through painful experience. The peace I have found came not from forgetting the betrayal, but from creating firm boundaries around it. It no longer defines me or my future. Last month, a colleague confided that his wife was having an affair. Instead of bitter advice, I was able to offer perspective and support as he navigated his own path forward. Julia and I are expecting our first child in November. We sold my harbor condo and built a home together in a quiet suburb, a fresh start without ghosts. When we learned we were having a son, Julia suggested naming him after my father, a gesture that brought tears to the old man's eyes when we told him. The betrayal that once seemed like the end of my world eventually revealed itself as a painful but necessary redirection. The marriage I thought was perfect was actually built on shaky foundations. My workaholic tendencies, Sophia's need for constant attention, our mutual avoidance of difficult conversations. I saw Derek briefly at my parents' 40th anniversary celebration. We exchanged cordial nods, but little else. There is no Hollywood reconciliation in our story, just two brothers who share blood but walk separate paths. And that is okay. Not all relationships can or should be salvaged after betrayal. Dad had a health scare last winter, a minor heart attack that reminded us all how precious time is. During his recovery, he told me, "Of all my accomplishments, I am most proud of how you handled yourself through all this, son. You did not let bitterness consume you." That takes real character. The wisdom I have gained could fill volumes, but it boils down to this: betrayal will break your heart, but only you decide if it breaks your spirit. The story of my life is not the chapter where I lost my wife and brother. It is all the chapters that came after, where I found myself. The family I have created with Julia feels stronger, more authentic than the one I lost. We talk openly about our fears and needs. We make time for each other, without sacrificing our individual passions. And when I hold her at night, I sometimes find myself grateful for the painful journey that led me to this more genuine love. Life rarely unfolds as we expect, Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the greatest growth. Have you ever experienced betrayal that eventually led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming life's challenges. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worst chapter can become the prelude to your best.